Hello everybody, my name is Gary Wills. This is episode 17 on my channel, and I'd just like to take you through the third refight that I have completed of the Guards Brigade attack on the village of Linselles on the 18th of August 1793. This is a 15mm black powder war game using some rules I've made up myself and profiles that I've developed from the historical orders of battle. Thank you. First, a bit on the campaign background, and the first thing I need to say is that although the battle honour is spelt with a C, Linselles, the actual place name has always been spelt with an S, and this relates to an anomaly between various contemporary maps of the area used by the different combatants. Anyway, in August 1793, the Allies had just taken the fortress of Valenciennes, just inside the French border, and they were faced with a choice as to what to do. Paris was only 126 miles away, and obviously the total war philosophy would have led them to march directly on Paris. However, the British government wanted the Duke of York to attack Dunkirk on the coast, which had always been a desired outcome of the campaign, and the Austrians, their allies, preferred to attack another fortress, Le Quesnoy, and so the Duke of York marched from Valenciennes towards the coast, and on the 18th of August they were close to the little village of Linselles. In the early morning of the 18th, as the Duke of York marched to Menin, the Prince of Orange with his Dutch forces used the support of the Duke of York to attack the French outposts, which were under the command of future Marshal MacDonald, and occupied the two little posts of Le Blétan and Linselles. And the attack at dawn was successful in driving off the inferior French outposts. However, in the afternoon, another future French Marshal, General Division Jourdan, along with MacDonald and Bayrou, decided that they would attack the villages of Linselles and Le Blétan with their forces and drive off the Dutch, which they successfully did. The Dutch commander at Linselles, who was mortally wounded that day, sent off a request to Menin for reinforcements to help them hold back the large numbers of French that were coming his way. And as a result, the Prince of Orange asked the Duke of York for support, and the Duke of York sent the Brigade of Guards to Linselles to retake it. So now the French order of battle for the fight in the evening at Linselles. General Division Jourdan led the troops, and in total he had about 9 battalions of infantry. They had also a half company of artillerie légère or horse artillery, plus some battalion guns. The troops had been reinforced by 2 small detachments, the Légion Franche Étrangère and the Légion Belge. Altogether there were 5,000 men and 11 to 14 guns. However, that's not the whole story. Jourdan had a great deal of trouble getting his men to face the British, as they were far too busy looting the houses in the village. And so, to determine which battalions were actually available for the defence, I rolled a d6 for each battalion, and on a score of 1 or 2 the unit remained in the village. And then on each move that followed, the lost units could roll a further d6, and on a score of 6 could deploy out of the village and receive orders as normal. So in this particular game, Jordan was quite fortunate, and in fact he only lost one group of tirailleurs from the whole of the 2 brigades. So he ended up with 9 battalions in all on the table. So the British order of battle is much simpler. Major General Gerard Lake, who'd served in the American Revolutionary War, had 3 battalions of guards: the 1st Foot Guards, the Coldstream Guards, and the 3rd Foot Guards, later the Scots Guards. And these each had 2 6-pounder battalion guns with them. So in total he had about 1,300 men and 6 guns. There's quite a big difference in the quality of the 2 sides. So although the French outnumber the British by 3 to 1, this is compensated for by their profiles in the game. So the French start with a staff rating of 7, and their close combat scores are reduced by 1 to 5 for a standard battalion. Shooting score also reduced by 1 to 2. Their morale save is made worse, but 5+, but their stamina stays the same at 3. All of the French battalions are considered to be unreliable, so they don't move on an equal staff rating. And the 2 battalions, the 1st Allier and the 2nd Paris Volunteers, are large. The battalion guns are given the profile 2-1-1 in the game, and the horse artillery 3-2-1, and these reflect the relative sizes of the batteries. The fortifications give a +1 to the morale save of the defenders. For the British, Lake is given a staff rating of 8, and the battalions are given close combat scores slightly better than normal at 7, shooting normal at 3. The morale save is improved at 3+, and their stamina is as normal 3. In this game, the guards are given the steady special rule, which means they always pass or get a maximum score on their first break test. They're also elite 3+, reliable, and they have first fire. The 3rd Foot Guards are in this scenario large, and their battalion guns have the same 2-1-1 profile. The numbers at the bottom represent the relative points total, and although the French outnumber the British, the points were a lot closer, with 580 to just under 400. Another feature of the French armies of this time were the attachment of these representatives of the people from the National Convention. And these are civilians. René Levasseur was a surgeon by training, but he had been attached and came with Jourdan to observe the sacred fire in the soul of the French soldier and help them. He actually did well on the day. He showed significant bravery according to observers, and so one feature added to the game was to attach him to a unit, any unit, and with a command test, a straight command test of 7, if he succeeded, he gave that unit either terrifying charge in an attack situation or stubborn in a defense situation, showing his inspirational effect. If he failed, there was no effect if he scored 8+. However, if he blundered, he fled the field, and the unit he was with was forced to take a break test. So this adds a little bit of the character of the French revolutionary armies to the game. So this shows the battlefield map and the deployment. The green areas show orchards that are all hedged enclosures, and there's the odd hedged field as well. There are farms scattered all over the place, but none of them are seen to be tactically significant. The town of Linselles itself can't be garrisoned. It's full of looters, and you can see the two redoubts to the right of Linselles, which the French can occupy. The guards march on from the top right corner of the battlefield, as it's shown on this map. In terms of victory conditions for the British, it's simple. They either have to capture the redoubts or break both French brigades. On the other side of the coin, all the French have to do is break or shake all three of the British Guards battalions. The Guards fought particularly well on this day, so I've made it a bit more difficult to break them. So here we are onto the game proper, and this shows the deployment of the British Guards coming onto the battlefield in column of march, with the first Guards leading, the third Guards in the centre, and the Coldstream Guards in their position at the rear of the column. And here we see on the French left, Beru's brigade deployed in two lines, and the four battalion guns that they possess are deployed in the northern redoubt. Jourdan's brigade of 5 battalions is deployed on the right, have their tirailleurs on their extreme right flank, and the light artillery, the horse artillery, is deployed in the southern redoubt. So the British start as they're the attackers, so this is British turn 1, and didn't start terribly well. The command test for Lake was a 10, which reduces their movement just to 1 move. They're in column on the road with his staff rating of 8, so that's just 1 move. You also see here the new war bases tokens indicating their steady status in brown and their first fire status in green, and obviously these tokens are taken off as those rules are applied. So the brigade uses its 1 move to slowly unwind from the road and advance slowly up the slope towards the French. In their first move, Jourdan sent forward his tirailleurs towards the orchard so they could harass the developing deployment of the British. In the shooting phase, the French guns opened up on the first foot guards, and although not causing them a casualty, did cause them some disorder. Moving on to British turn 2, and this didn't start particularly well. The Guards battalions each have elite 3+, so they have a 2 in 3 chance of removing the disorder at the start of their turn, but the first foot guards were obviously more upset than normal and failed to remove the disorder. Nevertheless, Lake pressed on with his deployment, sending the third foot guards up the slope with 2 sections of the battalion guns, and the Coldstreams catching up from their position at the rear of the column. On French turn 2, Jourdan's tirailleurs were moved further forward towards the bean field, but were still unable to engage any of the British Guards. On Beru's flank, the artillery was much less effective in this turn than the last. British turn 3 started poorly for the British again, and this time Lake surpassed himself and with a command rating of 11 was unable to move any of his troops. In French turn 3, Jourdan, despite being close on hand, was unsuccessful in moving his tirailleurs any further forward, and so the whole thing has started very hesitantly. Again, on Beru's front, the artillery fire has proved ineffective, obviously flying over the heads of the approaching guards. Now in British turn 4, and this time Lake has been more successful, pushing his infantry on towards the northern redoubt. The 3rd Foot Guards opened fire on the nearest French battalion, the 1st Battalion of the 47th, and disappointingly only scored 1 casualty. Now in French turn 4, and the 2nd Paris Volunteers have charged the oncoming 3rd Foot Guards, but unfortunately in the closing fire they've received 3 casualties from that large battalion. Meanwhile, the French artillery caused multiple casualties on both the 1st Foot Guards and their supporting Coldstream Guards. In the close combat involving the 2nd Paris Volunteers and the 3rd Foot Guards, the Foot Guards created more casualties, but the 2nd Paris had the 1st 47th in support, and so it ended up as a draw. However, the casualties were enough to shake the 2nd Paris Volunteers, who then had to take a break test with -1 to the result, which meant that they, when they threw a 5, they were broken. First blood to the British. However, with the 2nd Paris running from the field, the 3rd Foot Guards still faced an uphill challenge against the remainder of Beru's brigade. And here, at the end of French turn 4, you can see an overview of the battlefield from the French right. So we move on to British turn 5, and it started with Lake trying to move the Coldstream Guards, but he only succeeded in blundering, which ended up with a move to their left, which meant they were, fortunately for them, able to form a screen against the harassing skirmishers. However, before that had happened, on initiative, the 3rd Foot Guards were able to charge home on the 1st Battalion 47th Infantry Regiment. Meanwhile, the British battalion guns were able to fire into the infantry unit supporting the French 1st 47th. In the close combat, the 3rd Foot Guards scored 3 casualties to 1 against the 1st 47th. However, the 1st 47th were able to hold on as a draw with their 2 supporting battalions and survived their break test. And here you can see an overview of the game as the British turn 5 comes to an end. French turn 5 started with the tirailleurs retiring to a safe distance so they could keep the Coldstreams under fire. And this paid off as the Coldstreams ended up with a further casualty. They now got 2 alongside the 2 scored on the 1st Foot Guards. In the continuing combat between the 1st 47th and the 3rd Foot Guards, they both scored 1 casualty each, but this is not enough to shake the 3rd Foot Guards. However, the 1st 47th won the combat thanks to their close supports, and this required the 3rd Foot Guards to use their steady special rule to survive the resulting break test. We're now on British turn 6, and the British Guards have managed to form one line and have opened fire on the artillery in the redoubts, and although they had no effect despite using their first fire special rule. Meanwhile, in the ongoing close combat between the 3rd Foot Guards and the 1st 47th, this ended up with a 4-0 win for the 3rd Foot Guards, which overwhelmed the support that the 1st 47th had. And unfortunately, the 1st 47th broke in the break test, as did one of the 2 supporting units. Moving on to French turn 6, and this started with the realization that with 3 units gone, Barrou had reached his break point for the brigade, and so he had to withdraw with his remaining battalion. Meanwhile, the Coldstream Guards are exposed on the end of the British line to withering fire from the French artillery and tirailleurs, which causes them to become both shaken and disordered. Here you can see an overview of the battlefield at the end of French turn 6, with the game looking a little better balanced now that Barrou's brigade has been beaten off. British turn 7 started with the Coldstream Guards being unable to remove their disorder using their elite 3+ rule, and so they were unable to move. However, the other 2 British battalions were able to advance slowly towards the redoubts and their defenders, and the fire of the battalion guns were able to inflict a casualty on the 1st Battalion 45th. So at the end of the move, the Coldstreams are able to get rid of their disorder and hopefully rejoin the action. At the beginning of French turn 7, the Barrou's shattered brigade continues its march back to Valmorcies. Meanwhile, on the other flank, the Coldstream Guards in their exposed position were exposed to more withering artillery and skirmisher fire, and 3 more casualties were caused. They were also disordered, giving them a -4 on their break test, and they only scored 4 in the first place, so that meant that they were broken and removed from the table. Here we are at the beginning of British turn 8, and the 1st Foot Guards have charged in on a section of battalion guns in front of the French infantry, becoming shaken in the closing fire. However, their steady rule meant they survived the break test and were able to break the artillerymen in the ensuing close combat. In French turn 8, the 1st Foot Guards were in turn charged by the 1st Battalion 45th Infantry Regiment, and they received a casualty from closing fire as they charged in. The close combat went badly for the British, and they lost that 1-0 on casualties, 3-0 overall because of the support, but they held firm in their break test and the combat continued. And this shows you an overview of the battlefield at the end of French turn 8. In British turn 9, Lake moved the battalion guns of the 1st Foot Guards into a position to cover the exposed flank of the whole position. Meanwhile, the 3rd Foot Guards moved slowly across the position of the redoubt and engaged their nearest target, another section of French battalion guns. The fire was desultory, but did indeed disorder them. Meanwhile, the close combat involving the 1st Foot Guards and the 1st 45th carried on without result. Now on French turn 9, and Jourdan sent forward the 1st Battalion of the Dallier Volunteers, accompanied by Levasseur, to attack the covering guns of the 1st Foot Guards. They were disordered, however, in the closing fire. In the resulting break test, the 1st Dallier were forced to retire and still remaining disordered. In this instance, Levasseur's effect was uninspirational. However, in the close combat between the 1st Foot Guards and the 1st 45th, they won it by 2 casualties to 0, and although the 1st 45th were supported, the 1st Foot Guards were also supported by the 3rd Foot Guards, and they were therefore able to win the combat. In the resulting break test, the 1st 45th were broken and fled the field, and one of their supports was forced to retreat away from the combat. Threatened to their flank, the 1st Foot Guards decided to retire as part of their follow-up move to form a line along the ridge that their own battalion guns occupied. We're now in British turn 10, and this started with the 3rd Foot Guards charging the one remaining battalion of French infantry, and managed to get through the closing fire without effect. Meanwhile, Lake rallied one of the casualties from the 1st Foot Guards, taking them out of shaken status. And this paid immediate dividends, as the fire of the 1st Foot Guards and their battalion guns created more casualties on the 1st Allié, shaking them and disordering them. Meanwhile, the close combat between the 3rd Foot Guards and their opponents, the 10th Paris Volunteers, has ended in a stalemate, although the 10th Paris were shaken as a result of the casualties they received. That shaken status ended up with the whole of Jordan's brigade being broken, because 3 units were either shaken or destroyed. And so this meant that the remainder of his units had to begin the disorderly withdrawal back to Bondouz. Meanwhile, Beru was leading his remnants away from the battlefield. In the close combat phase, it went from bad to worse. The 10th Paris were broken, and that meant that Jourdan himself became a casualty. So with both French brigades broken, we can only declare the scenario a British victory, mimicking history. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and here you can see some of my publications that are available both directly from myself and from Helion. And if you've enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe, and any comments you want to make, I'll be most interested to receive. Thanks very much.